there are people that say Jesus had no trial. He had no trial. But in fact, what does the Gospel of Matthew and the other Gospels show us that Jesus had? How many trials did he actually have? I like that answer. That's a good answer. Same as us, right? Daily trials. He had, let's look at them. First of all, before who? A private hearing. Annas, who was the high priest from 6 to 15 AD. He had 5 sons. They would all become high priests, eventually serving a short time. It's an appointment by Rome sadly, at this point in time. But Annas, who retains the name, the title, and much of the power, though he's not the acting high priest. After Annas, Jesus doesn't say anything to Annas. And so Annas sends him off to who? All right, Caiaphas, who is his son-in-law. And he will be the high priest from about 18 to 36 AD. His son-in-law, Caiaphas. And then after his trial before Caiaphas, which is all of these are a mockery of justice. It's just nothing but a kangaroo court. The greatest mockery of justice there has ever been. No one was more innocent, more undeserving of what Jesus received, but they didn't care. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in justice. They're only interested in killing Jesus. That's their goal. How can we kill Jesus? And they're using a corrupt political system to do that. So we'll read about Caiaphas, or we've read about Caiaphas, and they're about to render their verdict, and then they send him off to who? Who's the Roman governor at the time in that area? All right, Pilate. So they'll send him to Pilate, who's the acting governor, and 10 years, 26 to 36 AD, a long time for a person to be a procurator. Pilate, and then Pilate, though, when he learns Jesus is from Galilee, he thinks, great, I can be free of this situation, and send him off to Herod Antipas, one of the wicked sons of wicked Herod the Great. They're all chips off the old block. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. They're all wicked men. And Herod Antipas, Jesus says, is a fox. Go tell that fox, he'll say. Just crafty, deceitful man. So he sends him to Herod Antipas, and he doesn't say anything to him either. Like a lamb before it shears, silent, doesn't say a thing. Jesus is determined. He knows he's going to die. It's going to happen. I'm not giving you the joy of a word from me. And then Herod Antipas, when he sees Jesus, is not going to put on a show for him and work a miracle, which is what he was hoping for. He sends him back to Pilate. And then Pilate does everything he knows to do to free Jesus, but in the end, he shows his cowardice, and for the sake of political expediency, he gives Jesus over to the Jews to be crucified. So 5 trials, basically. This is all night long. This is going on all night long, and the next day with Caiaphas, and the next day Pilate, and then early in the morning, and then Herod Antipas and Pilate. No wonder he's extremely, after all of these trials, he's been up all night, slapping spittle all over his face. It has been a horrible, horrible time. And this is just part of Jesus' prayer, let this cup pass from me. It's not just the crucifixion, but it's all of it. All of it. And this is leading up to the crucifixion. Well, eventually, Caiaphas is going to have to come up with a charge. Otherwise, Pilate's not interested. What's the charge the Jews and their religion drum up against Jesus? What's their charge against Jesus? All right, blasphemy. He is irreverent to God. He has been disrespectful of God in claiming to be the Son of God. We read that last week in Matthew 26. So he is irreverent to God. And at other times, they'll say he broke the Sabbath. But is Pilate interested in blasphemy or Jesus breaking the Sabbath? He doesn't care about that. And had they brought that up to him, he would have said, handle that yourselves. So what do they come up with as far as Pilate is concerned that he would be interested in? What do they come up with? Okay, that Jesus claims to be a king. Now, when Pilate hears that charge, and they also charge him of insurrection, he causes riots, he stirs up the people. Aren't you concerned about that? But the main one is this. This is treason. And Pilate has to pay attention to that because those who are above him will punish him if he doesn't deal with this. This is serious business to him. Okay, claims to be a king. I need to find out to what degree. What's this all about? So that's the charge that he is investigating. Look with me now at Matthew 26. We're going to continue about verse 67, Matthew 26 and verse 67. When Jesus stood before Caiaphas, the scene very quickly degenerates into cruelty and brutality. Verse 67, they spit in his face. A terrible indignity. They spit in his face. They beat him with their fist, so a clenched hand, and others slap him with the flat of their hand. So both punching him and slapping him. This is part of the treatment he endured on the way to the cross. And then they mock him and they say, prophesy to us, Christ, who is the one who hit you? In the meantime, another prophecy is about to be fulfilled concerning Peter. Verse 69 through 75. I need a reader. Somebody please read verse 69 through 75. Anyone, just take off when you're ready.
Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came and said, "You too were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied before them all, saying, "I do not know what you're talking about." And he had gone out to the gateway. Another saw it and said to those who were there, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, denied, "Oh, I do not know the name." A little later, the bystanders came up and said to Jesus, "Surely you are of them. For even the way you talk gives you away." And he began to curse and swear, "I do not know the name." Immediately, the rooster crowed. Peter remembered the word that Jesus had said, "Before rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
There's no question that Peter repented of this sin, and John's gospel will make it abundantly clear that Jesus publicly wanted the others to know that he had not only repented. This is in John 21, where Jesus asked 3 times, "Do you love me?" Not only had he repented, but Jesus is restoring him to the stewardship that trained him to occupy for 3 years. Tend my sheep, shepherd my lambs. that is still your responsibility. So all is made right. Though I'm sure Peter would remember this for the rest of his life. God forgave him. He needed to forgive himself. He needed to move on. And he does. It's not mentioned again. So 3 times. And so we have, first of all, he's in the courtyard. And this is the house of Caiaphas, by the way. This must have been an enormous dwelling, especially in those times. You see the kind of money this man Caiaphas had. And Luke will tell us in chapter 16 that these Sadducees, these leaders of the Jews, were filthy rich. A lot of their money had come off of the backs of very poor people. Widows and orphans they had taken advantage of. They were greedy, envious, power-hungry people. Very, very corrupt people. That's the kind of people we're looking at here. Well, this is his house. He has a courtyard. Peter's in that courtyard. A servant girl recognizes him as being with Jesus. And Peter first denies it. He lies. No, you're mistaken about that. And so he wants to avoid any further questioning. So he gets away from the courtyard, and when he's in an area Matthew calls the archway of the house, there's another person that says, I recognize him. You know, it's a political train wreck now to be identified with Jesus. And Peter doesn't want that identification. And so, you know, when this person says, yeah, he's one of the individuals that was with Jesus, this time he denies it with what? With an oath, which means he invoked the name of God. He denies it with an oath. So he denies it, and he denies it, invoking the name of God. So, third occasion, he's recognized, and yeah, you're one of them. I'd recognize that hillbilly Galilean accent anywhere. I've heard that kind of talk, and you're one of those people from Galilee, and all the disciples, you know, save Judas, were from Galilee. And so this time he denies it. But what is the word that Matthew uses to identify his denial? He denies it with cursing. Cursing. So he invokes the name of God, he denies it. So a triple denial here. And then the cursing would be not like cursing that we may think of it in our culture, but this is actually calling upon himself, evidently, a curse from God if this isn't the truth. Cursing. So that which he said he would never do, he does. Easy to say that with Jesus there, you know, before all of the trouble. It's more difficult now. You know, it's easy for us to worship God and say, this is right, and we need to do that, and we're going to do that. It won't be so easy when you go to work tomorrow. It won't be easy when you're with friends, maybe, and they tempt you to do this or say this or participate in this. It'll be different then. And so let's heed the lesson here, as Jesus said, watch and pray. Watch and pray. We gain strength here. We encourage one another to be ready for the battles, the trials that are coming. Easy to be right here, but it won't be so easy once we leave. And so let's equip each other to be ready and learn, watch and pray. Peter didn't watch and pray. He wasn't prepared for this. Just as Jesus said, he denied him 3 times before the cock crowed twice. That's in another gospel account. And when he denied him that 3rd time, what did Jesus, Luke will tell us this, what did Jesus do? He turned and looked at him. And just imagine Jesus looking right at you with eyes that can see all the way through you into your heart, the deepest recess of your mind. Nothing is hidden from the Lord. And knowing he is completely guilty, he He leaves that place and he begins to cry like a baby. This is loud wailing we're talking about here. He truly was remorseful and sorry that he had done what he did. But he repented and God forgave him. Remember one other thing, that before all this happened, Jesus said, I prayed for you, and when you turn, strengthen your brethren. And so Jesus interceded in prayer. The importance of intercession, we talked about it in regard to those sick, the work, the Spanish work, and many other things. Intercessory prayer is very, very important. Ask one another for intercessory prayer. And we see the power of that in Jesus' prayer for Peter. In chapter 27, we're ready to begin there. They're going to hand Jesus now over to Pilate. Verse 1, morning had come, all the chief priests, the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. Again, notice there's no effort to learn the truth. Their goal is to put him to death. So, as if it was needed, they bind him. They led him away and delivered him to Pilate, the governor. Now, I have a question for you. Why is Pilate involved in this at all? Why don't the Jews just take him out and stone him like they did Stephen? Why is Pilate involved? About 63 BC, the Jews became subject to Rome, and Rome set up all the rules, all the laws that they were to follow. And among those rules and laws, you can have your courts, you can have your judges, you can go ahead and have your trials for whatever. You can issue your verdicts, guilty or innocence. And as a rule, you can carry them out. But if you pronounce the death penalty upon anyone, that decision must be submitted to the leading official of the town, the city, the province. In this case, it's Pilate. And so they have pronounced the death penalty upon Jesus. They've drummed up the charge of insurrection, treason. So he's brought to Pilate under that charge. And so Pilate, that's his jurisdiction. He has to oversee this case. Now, as the primary ruler, Pilate can either throw the case out, or he can hear the case. He can render a different verdict. I mean, he could have released Jesus, keep in mind. He could have said, no, I don't agree with you. Just as he said, he's innocent. I'm going to let him go. And Jesus, go out the back door. But it wasn't politically expedient. He wanted to keep favor with the Jews, and so he went along, washing his hands in front of them, knowing he was innocent, but it did not relieve him of accountability. So that's why he had to be handed over to Pilate. That's the Roman law. Now, Pilate could throw it out, or he could agree with it, and eventually he just goes along with it. So here he is before Pilate. Yes, sir. Say that again, brother. Yeah, good point. David asked, and we remembered your brother, by the way. I want to let you know that, David, and we'll pray for him. Why did they allow the stoning of Stephen in Acts chapter 7? Because that was against Roman law. What they did was against the law. Well, sometimes the Romans would just turn their head and allow things, that was a mob situation, that was a riot, and they would just sometimes let things go just to keep favor with the Jews. They would just let it go. So they did allow certain things at times to happen. It was illegal. What they did was illegal. They were not supposed to do that. Yeah. So it happened though. And Pilate did some terrible things to the Jews. Pilate, by the way, hated the Jews, as most Romans did. There was a great prejudice between Jewish people and Roman people. Luke 13, he mingled the blood of people offering sacrifice. Jesus talks about those people that Pilate had killed, mingling their blood with their sacrifice. And so this is just going to be an opportunity for Roman soldiers to take out their animosity on the Jews in general, targeting Jesus, against Jesus. And they're going to do that. Go ahead and let's read together the first 6 verses here. I need a reader. Matthew 27, 1 through 6, please. Just anyone. Yes, sir.
And when Judas, the betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, changed his mind, brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. Throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed. The chief priests, taking the piece of silver, said, it is not lawful to put it in the treasure, since it is blood.
You think Judas' life would have been different, class, if he had just waited 3 days? I wonder sometimes how different my life would have been in different ways if I had done as the psalmist tells me over and over and over, wait on the Lord. I know Jesus would have forgiven him. Everything Jesus said would happen, would have happened. I like Jared's definition of suicide. It's a permanent response to a temporary problem. It is never the option. Never. It's not an option. He felt so remorseful. He went out and hung himself. There he remained until evidently it whatever instrument he used to hang himself with, it broke. He fell, and the impact atrophy had set in and caused his bowels to gush out. It's just a terrible, terrible end to this man. But Jesus would have forgiven him had he just really listened to him. Listen to him. And not yourself. Listen to Jesus. No matter what the sin is, he will forgive you. Notice they said, he threw the money back to the people, and they said, what is that to us? In verse 4. What is that to us? They don't care if Jesus is innocent or not. They don't care. They just want him dead. And they don't care about Judas. He's just been a pawn. Yes, sir.
I've been thinking about this when you listen to the trials of Jesus, and we'll see it again in the middle of this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But the more Jewish leaders are, the more they were intent on destroying Jesus. Innocent Caiaphas, they wanted to kill him, just looking for some way to justify their own lives and why they could kill him.
Yeah.
Herod, who is less Jewish, is only basically a half Jew, he doesn't care about Jesus one way or another except for the show home.
Right.
He just wants to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
And Pilate, who is the Gentile, through and hates the Jews, is the only one who's trying to set them free.
Yes.
Who recognizes he's truly innocent.
Yes.
And this again is an example of that. care about Judas feeling remorse in them. That's
Mhm.
that's completely opposed to their viewpoint. Their viewpoint is we want to destroy them.
Is it any wonder that less than 40 years from this day, that nation's going to be wiped out? This is here mainly, these things are written that we may believing have life in his name. What's here is sufficient to establish faith in a good and honest heart. But it also shows us, does it not, that these were very corrupt, very unmerciful, unforgiving people. They were nothing like the God they claimed to believe in, nothing. And so we're seeing that in the case of Jesus more than in anything. But we've seen it many, many times in the parables, but we see it here more than in anything. In verse 6, they don't want to, do anything against the sanctuary. We can't put this money in the treasury of the sanctuary. I mean, wouldn't that be awful? What does that say about their mindset? What's important to them? What does Jesus say in Matthew 23 about the scribes and the Pharisees in this lengthy indictment of their heart and their life? They strain out the gnats and swallow the camels. It's in Matthew 23, about verse 21 through 25. And so he said, you've neglected the weightier things, love, mercy, faithfulness. And this is just a classic example of straining out the gnat and swallowing the camel. They are murderers, and they're concerned about the propriety of the temple treasury. They're devious, demonic men, but they tithe Dent Mill and Cumming. Every week they tithe. And so it's just another example of how they major in the minors and they minor in the majors. Their priorities are all mixed up. And so it's a great lesson to me to be careful that I keep the right priorities. And I remember what's weighty. What Jesus says is weighty: love, mercy, kindness, self-control, compassion. Those are weighty things. Okay, verse 7 through 10. Someone read that, please. Verse 7 through 10.
After conferring together, they used them to buy the potter's field as a place to bury foreigners. For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of the one on whom a price had been set, on whom some people of Israel had set a price, and they gave them for the potter's field as the Lord commanded.
Remember Matthew's main objective? It starts in verse 1, chapter 1. This is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. His main objective is proving Jesus is the Christ. He does that by the time you get to chapter 16, and then Jesus begins to say over and over again, since I am the Christ, I must suffer. That's what the plan is. I have to suffer for you, but I'm going to be raised on the third day. Now, in keeping with that objective, Matthew will quote prophecy after prophecy after prophecy. And in the midst of all of this, he says, and here's another prophecy that was fulfilled, proving Jesus is the Christ, and since he's the Christ, he had to suffer. And the prophecy was that this money would be thrown and used to buy potter's field. which is quite an amazing prophecy. It's suggested the potter's field was probably either it was owned by a man named Potter, or it was a field where pottery was made from the clay of the ground. Non-local Jews who came to Jerusalem and died, poor people, they would use that as a burial place. So that's evidently what's going on. But the main point is it fulfilled prophecy in keeping with Matthew's main objective about Jesus. Yes.
These guys that counsel together decide what to do. They should have read this passage, known it, and almost like if they did, prophecy was so strong that they could have. They were like fulfilling the prophecy. I think that shows their ignorance, or the fact that they have no control.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. If there's ever an example of God giving someone over, Romans 3, it begins with a lack of honor to God, and then we suppress the truth. We see the truth. We know what truth is. We just suppress it because we know if we accept it and we respond to it, then our life will have to change. That means transformation. I like my life. I enjoy what I'm doing. So we suppress it. And the more you suppress it, then more the lie becomes the truth. And you start putting your own spin on Isaiah 53. Instead of seeing a suffering Savior, you're saying, no, that's about the Jewish people. We're the ones suffering in Isaiah 53. If there's ever a case of God giving people over to a determined life of suppressing the truth, who have no interest in truth, it is the Jewish people here in the first century. So let us take heed to that. Do we truly want the truth? And if we do, what that means is Dempsey better be ready to follow it wherever it leads him, regardless of what anybody else is doing. I need to be willing to follow the truth wherever it leads me. And sometimes that's in difficult places. And it's going to cost me money, and it's going to cost me sacrifice. But God is worth it, and the truth is worth it. I appreciate that, Kevin. Anyone else comment before we proceed here? Jeff, anything you want to add to that? Okay, let's go ahead and look at verse 11 and 12. Jesus stood before the governor, Pilate. The governor questioned him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus says, "You say." He affirms his kingship. And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. And then verse 13, Pilate said to him, "Do you hear the things they're saying against you?" And in verse 12, where it says being accused, the Greek tense is repeatedly, non-stop accusations. They are just hurling accusations at him. Every evil thing they can think of. And Pilate says, don't you hear what they're saying? But verse 14, he did not answer him with regard to even a single charge, so that the governor was quite amazed. So Pilate's ruler, he's judge, he's had countless cases. Men have stood before him, and women, and he's heard every story you can imagine, and he has seen every response you can imagine in a court setting. And so you think about a court setting in which a man is accused of a capital offense. Typically, how would that man respond to the charge that is punishable by death? How would you respond to that if you're in a court and you've been charged with, accused of an offense punishable by death? A desperate, very spirited, I'll say, very spirited defense. You would be actively defending yourself. And that's what Pilate is used to. People saying anything and everything, because the Romans didn't just kill you. They tortured you in the worst way so that you wished you were dead on the way to being killed. And of course, Jesus knows that as well as anyone. And so Pilate is amazed at his composure. How are you remaining so composed? And that would be so impressive to somebody like him. You can just imagine him looking at Jesus. I can't figure this guy out. This is not normal. This is different. He's never seen anything like this, never seen anyone like this. So he's beginning to see Jesus is different. And so verse 15 through 18, someone read that, please. 15 through 18.
Now, the Passover feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the people anyone prisoner whom they wanted. At that time, they were holding a poorest prisoner called Barabbas. So people gathered together. Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want these released? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was because of the envy that they had handed him over.
Is that something? He knew enough about human nature and people to recognize envy. Of course, he had lots of it himself, I'm sure, but he recognized it in them. This was not about justice. This is not about truth. This is about envy. Envy. And a group of people who want what Jesus, envy is all about. I want what you have, not to share it. I want to take it from you and have it for myself. That's envy. I don't feel right with you having it. And so I want it. In this case, it's the acceptance of the people, the popularity, and what goes along with that is power and money. So he could see that. And so he's trying to, at this point, what's he trying to do with Jesus at this point? He says, aha, I've got it. What's he trying to do? I got to figure out a way to get out of this, to release him. And so first of all, he comes up with this plan of Barabbas. So there's a tradition to help build political favor with the Jews that during the Passover will release someone into the public once again. So he says, he thinks this will be an obvious choice because not only is Barabbas a robber, what else is Barabbas? He's a murderer. Luke's account tells us he's been accused of murder. And so he thinks this is a no-brainer. So, okay, here's your choice. You want to release Barabbas or you want to release Jesus? And much to his surprise, they say, release Barabbas. Release Barabbas. And isn't that, in a way, what our salvation is all about? Isn't it? I mean, aren't we, in a way, Barabbas? I mean, Barabbas was guilty. Barabbas deserved to die. I deserve to die. And yet Jesus took Barabbas' place, and he took the punishment Barabbas deserved. And he took my place, and he took the punishment I deserve. So in a sense, we're all Barabbas. And
I'm told that the prison where Barabbas was kept was about a quarter mile away from where Pilate's portico was, where all this was going on. It's unlikely he could have heard what Pilate was saying, but it's very likely he could have heard what the crowd was saying. If you read this and just look at what the crowd says, you hear his name flash out, Barabbas, Barabbas. And then there's a pause. And then you say, let him be crucified. Let him be crucified.
Mhm.
And then the soldiers come. And then Barabbas finds out that he's not going to be crucified. He's set free because Jesus was crucified in his place. And it very much illustrates the point that you're making.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the book of Romans shows us over and over again. It's very much a court situation. God is the judge. And here's Jesus to plead our case. And through Jesus, our faith in him, we're declared innocent, justified. Look forward to studying that with you. Thoroughly enjoyed the study with you tonight. Look forward to continuing the study next week, Lord willing. Thank you very much.